Good morning from Reno, Nevada. My name is Matt Moore. This is race number 14, my Cassutt Formula One Air Racer that we race here in the gold class at Reno, Nevada. For those of you who are new to Formula One Air Racing, these are all plans-built airplanes. There's no kits, there's no manufacturer. You buy the plans, you go buy a bunch of chromoly tubing, and you commence to teaching yourself to weld. So these are all plans built. This particular airplane was got its first airworthiness in 1978. It's been racing here since about 1980. Got a long history, and it's a good, fast airplane. For Formula One air racing, like Formula One cars, there is a formula that we have to follow. There are minimum requirements. We all run the Continental 0200 engine. There's very little modification we can do. You can balance all the rotating assembly. Really good balance is important. We can do a little port work and polishing in the cylinders, a little bit of cam, but other than that, it has to be normally aspirated, fixed pitch propeller, fixed landing gear, 55 square feet of wing area, and minimum weight of 500 pounds. When we first arrive at Reno, we go through a rigorous technical inspection where they do verify, they check your cam lift and duration. They will check the cylinder volume for cc's, make sure you're within the tolerance of that. And they will check your carburetor jetting to make sure that you're not overjetting the carburetor. We do all have to fuel with 100 low lead pump gas off the truck. No fuel additives, no boost, no nitrous, no nothing funny, just straight 100 low lead gas. We all buy the same gas. Like I mentioned, propellers are fixed pitch, but you can change propellers. So a lot of guys will run a different length or a different pitch depending on what works best with their engine combination and the weight of their aircraft. We went through a series of about 3 propellers before we settled on the one that we're running this year at Race Week. Good carbon fiber. This is a nice revved up composites prop under there. So you can see it's all carbon fiber, very clean, very light. We take this 200 cubic inch engine that made 100 horsepower in stock configuration on a Cessna 150, and through this little bit of modification, we're turning these engines up to 4,200 RPMs now. We figure that's generating somewhere around 135 horsepower. So that's it for us. And this airplane weighed in at 601 pounds this week, and that'll pull this airplane around the course. I'm seeing course speeds in the mid 220s to 230 with this airplane. So that's all the power there is. That's it, man, the whole thing. The fuel cell is actually right here behind the firewall. We're required to launch with 5 gallons of fuel at the start of each heat. We really only burn about 2 gallons. From start up to shutdown is between 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how long we're sitting on the ramp and things like that. If we do a cool down lap, maybe after. So in that period of time, wide open throttle, we burn about 2 gallons of gas. The extra gas is in case there's incidents on the runways and they're fouled and we have to either loiter above the airfield for a few minutes, or we have to divert to an adjacent airfield. There's Beckworth not too far away, or downtown Reno. You got to have enough gas to get there. So that's why we're required to carry 5. This airplane actually has a 7-gallon fuel cell, so I can carry lots of gas. Yeah, so that's right under there. We fill it through the opening for the canopy. So we're gonna work our way around this way or that way. It's all good. It's all good. You can see the updraft carburetor under here. Got our little 4-quart peanut oil tank down here on the bottom. So it's typical dry sump setup. This airplane actually has a starter on it. You'll see a number of these do not have a starter. They still hand prop them. The starter's only a pound or 2 these days, so we don't worry about it quite as much as we used to. In the interest of safety, you're low to the ground, and with these little carbon fiber props, hand propping gets a little sketchy. So in the interest of safety, we went ahead and kept the starter on it. See, this airplane's got a really nice thin wing on it. This wing is all composite, built by a man named Robbie Grove. Very thin, very good airflow, great flying wing. You'll notice that the landing gear is all faired in, and the guys are doing a great job of taping things up. All the tape is there to smooth over any of the places where airflow can burble, and make just every little bit helps, right? We're going after nano knots at this point, right? Just anything we can do to smooth over airflow a little bit. Good morning, Cassidy. My crew chief Cassidy here, doing a fine job. So we got all the cowls off here. Watch your step. Ailerons are not particularly long on this airplane, but very effective. This thing is really responsive in flight. Thank you. It's all that. See, we got our Wile E. Coyote on here because, of course, the airplane is Acme Special too, and we're all about the Looney Tunes and Wile E. Coyote and all of that. You can see the cockpit's very rudimentary, very basic. I've got a digital tack and a little digital altimeter, battery-powered altimeter, the same kind of thing they use in ultralights. So that's pretty much it. And I'm not really looking at the altimeter when I'm going around the course. That's all sight lines and visual reference, but use that for other reference. Let's see, we got some good stickers on the tail. Memory of Creighton King, one of our air racers that recently passed away. Fifanella, the Wasp logo. A lot of people probably familiar with that. Walt Disney designed a lot of logos for different military units during World War II. Fifanella was the logo designed for the women Air Force service pilots. My mom was a bomber pilot in World War II. Mom flew B-25s, and then she went on to tow targets and strafing missions, and she flew just about everything short of 4 engines. She flew them all. She flew Marauders, she flew Helldivers, she flew Dauntless, she flew all that stuff, and had a lot of great stories. The rudder is pretty good size on this airplane for the size airplane it is. It has a lot of authority. Elevators are not so much, and they don't deflect very far. They don't look like they'd be really effective. They are very effective. This thing is very sensitive in all axis of flight. So my first experience with this airplane, when I looked at how little the elevator deflected, I thought that was a little light, you know, but as soon as I got in it and started flying it, I realized it was more than enough. She's very pitch sensitive. Very pitch sensitive. All right. We have to have big race numbers on the side so the pylon judges can see us when we go by. They have to be, I think 14 inches is the minimum height, so they want big numbers that contrast with the color of the airplane so that they can see when you're blasting by at blazing speeds of 225 miles an hour. You get Wiley out of the way here. There we go. There's no graceful way to get in and out of one of these little airplanes. Swing over and up and in. You can't step on the wing. Can't put any excess pressure on the wing. I can lean on it a little bit once I'm up in here and just give a little bit of pressure to scoot in and around. But from there, you're pretty much wearing the airplane at this point. So you can see this is the wing spar that goes from end to end right over my legs in here, right? There's not a lot of excess room in here. Throttle and mixture over here. I've got all the important radio frequencies here in a little handheld. And that's pretty much it. This airplane is so snug that I couldn't wear a conventional racing helmet. I had to switch to just a little kayak helmet. It was all I could fit under the canopy. So that's it. That's my whole racing helmet. That's it. And if you look where my head is, you'll see there is not any extra room. So I actually have to scooch down in the seat a fair amount. I'm pasted in here, shoulder harness down super snug, and the canopy is on right against the helmet. So it's right there. You got to have happy feet to fly one of these airplanes. You got to be good on your feet. It is a tail dragger, and it does not have a steerable or castering tail wheel. This has a fixed tail wheel. It's a little roller skate blade. We'll take a look at that in a minute. As far as speed goes, when we launch, the tail comes up on this airplane probably around 50 to 60 miles an hour. We keep the wheels on the ground to about 100, and then just in ground effect, we'll start to pull off a little bit and let it build up speed to about 120, and then we can climb out from there. Climbs pretty good at 120. 100 is also our landing speed. 120 on downwind, 110 for base, and touching down at 100. And it's all wheelies all the time. Be on your toes. Stall speed on this airplane is probably in the neighborhood of 75 to 80. That's pretty typical for most of these Cassutts. Some of them do better than that. You'll see there are different wing configurations throughout the hangar, and you'll see some of those. The great big slab wings will have a much slower stall speed. Some of them probably in the 60s even, but that's about it. That's about it. Let's see, I said we were turning these engines at 4,200 RPMs. We'll see oil pressure typically running between 40 and 60. We'll see cylinder head temperatures typically, we'd like to see them stay under 450, but we hit that 500 mark every now and then for cylinder heads. Oil temp, this airplane runs nice cool oil temps, 210, 220, which is totally fine on the race course. That's wide open throttle and just flogging it. We keep it going pretty good. Throttle and mixture over here, and my little handheld, and that's pretty much the cockpit tour. Just a 4-point harness inside to keep me from flying out, and that's pretty much it. We take some pretty good G's out there on the race course. We get a lot of turbulence from the airplanes ahead of you. Extraction is a whole nother process. So for a G load on the airplane, normally when we're racing, the turn at the east end is a little bit tighter than the west end, and we're pretty close to 3 Gs at the tightest point of the turn. But with the turbulence factors, we'll see anywhere from 3 to 6 or 7 or even more. I mean, we get bounced pretty hard sometimes. I took what I'm sure was a 6 G plus bounce a couple of days ago. It was pretty good hit. That up there. And out. And yes, I do a lot of stretching exercises to be able to do that. Under here you can see our little tail wheel. Most of it's all faired in. It's not much more than just a rollerblade fixed wheel in there. There's no steering to it at all. It just scoots along the ground. We'll fly in pretty strong crosswinds, to be honest. For racing, we actually have limits. Our total wind component can be no more than 35 miles per hour, and our crosswind component 25 miles per hour. And I've launched in pretty much right at that 25 mile an hour crosswind in one of these. In a 600-pound airplane, you get knocked pretty hard, but once you get going, it's not so bad. It's all right. Formula One starts like Formula One cars. We're all on a grid, 8 airplanes at a time. 3 airplanes across the front row, 2 airplanes staggered in the middle, and then 3 airplanes across the back row. The green flag goes up, we've got 10 seconds, and the green flag comes down, and everybody rolls all together. So we all launch at the same time. The reason for staggering lineup is so that if somebody has an issue and they don't go fast enough and whatnot, the other airplanes will go around them, theoretically, hopefully. From there, everybody has to maintain their line on the runway so that you don't drift. If somebody's coming around you, you don't want to drift over and cause a problem for them, right? So you maintain your line on the runway until you reach home pylon, then you can start angling in towards the first turn. Then it's a matter of just lining up. All passes in Formula One have to be to the outside, so you're watching the traffic ahead of you, and if you're faster, you want to stack up on the outside of them. You don't want to go wider, you just want to stack above them on that wing, is maintain the shortest line you possibly can and still get around them. Watching for turbulence, clear the wake turbulence of the airplane ahead of you. You never want to fly directly in the guy's line ahead of you. Best to be up and out just a little bit to minimize the amount of turbulence you're going to get. Monitoring the engine in the airplane when you're racing. At these speeds, I only have time to look at one gauge at a time, right? So I have to have in my head when I'm going across the front straightaway, what gauge am I going to look at on the back straightaway? Today, this pass, I'm going to look at RPMs. So after I get around turns 1, 2, 3, the pylons 1, 2, 3, and I start to level out, I'm only level for a second or so out on the back straightaway. I'll look down at the tack and look back up, and it's time to start rolling into the next turn. And then I'll have in my mind on the next pass, I'm going to look at cylinder head temperatures. And it's the same routine. The next lap around on the back straightaway, as soon as I get a little bit level, look down at cylinder heads, back up, and it's time to roll into the next turn. We're flying, our minimum flight level is 50 feet above the ground, and our maximum is 250 feet above the ground. So we have a 200-foot window to fly in. If you fly too high for any reason other than safety, traffic ahead of you, somebody gets bounced in turbulence or whatever, and you have to go above them, that's fine. But if for any other reason you fly high, that's a disqualification. You fly too low, that's a disqualification. Sagebrush is going by pretty fast at 50 to 80 feet off the ground. It's whipping right by, man. It's quite a sensation. Reno's the only place you can do that. You get 8 airplanes flying in uncooperative formation, we call it. So there's a lot of trust. You gotta trust the other pilots to have the experience and skill set to be able to handle it like gentlemen and not do anything really stupid out there, right? What else can I tell you? It's pretty speedy. There's pylon judges out there keeping an eye on us. Every one of those. So we have pylons 1, 2, 3 on the east end of the course. There's a guide pylon in the back in the middle. That's where they're just monitoring whether we're too high or low on that back straightaway. And then pylons 4, 5, and 6 on the west end of the race course. It's very easy to get low on this race course. There's actually 80-foot elevation change between the east and west end of the course. The east being the high end, west being the low end. And if you're just following terrain, it's real easy to drop down in there, and they'll get you on that back side for low flying all the time. We have people called on that one a lot. Guilty, my first year. And it's fun flying low. So we try to be on the high end of the course. I try to be very close to the cans. There's the pylons are basically telephone poles with great big barrels on them, and there are people on the ground, judges, keeping an eye on us to make sure that our head has to be at least as high as the barrel on the top of the pole, and that we're not cutting inside the barrel at all. There's somebody down there looking straight up through the barrel every time airplanes go by. And so that's how they spend their day. Can you imagine the massage bill for those people? So they're keeping an eye on us, making sure everything's that we're behaving ourselves out there and flying a good line. We try to be as close to the barrels as we can on the high end of the course on the east end, and then that usually puts me 50 to 75 feet over the barrels on the west end. I try to fly a flat line is more efficient. The challenge with that is that you're high off the barrels on this end, off the pylons on this end, and it's real easy to drift a little wide when you're flying higher. So you got to really make sure you're still flying the right line, but flying nice and level. So that's how we do that one. The race is 8 laps. 8 laps, wide open throttle. That little bit of monitoring. If you see the temperature coming up a little bit, put a little more mixture back in it. That's about all we can do. There's no other adjustments in flight other than mixture and throttle. So you either put the mixture all the way in, or you ease off on the throttle. And nobody wants to go slower. Passing, like I said, is always on the outside, unless for reasons of safety. If a guy drifts really wide, you can go inside of him. But other than that, it's all outside. And it's crazy fun. A lot of good stuff. Well, I guess that's it for our walk around today. Thanks for joining us at Reno Air. It's been a great morning. Pleasure to share some information about Formula One air racing and my Cassutt Air Racer, and appreciate you making time to be with us today.